I'm a country boy through and through, a farm boy, a redneck. None of those are derogatory terms for me. Those are badges of honor. I was born in Northeast Arkansas in the Delta on a family farm, so German Catholic farming family. It was very small, tiny little farm. We had a lot of responsibilities. It was just work, day in and day out. If there's sunlight, you're working. Mom was a very shy lady, very introverted. She's always worked in the office, kind of behind the scenes jobs. Honestly, I don't have a lot of memories back that far of Dad with us, but May 5th, 1994 changed my life. My older sister, my younger sister and I were with my father. We stayed the night at his parents' house, the next town over, about 25 minutes away. Every time we'd go and stay the night with them, my mom would always prepare supper for us. Some sort of, dish, it didn't matter. We would always eat supper, and then we would go out and always wash Dad's truck. Like, he always kept it pristine. Outside was always clean, the inside too, Armor All on the dashboard and everything. The next morning, we're making this 25-minute drive back to the house, and we're 1.5 miles from our house. There's a small little curve in the road, and we have to exit that curve and go down this other side road to get to our house. The casserole dish was on the dashboard of the truck. When we hit that curve, it started sliding across the dash, and Dad didn't want it to go and bang out the passenger side window. He leaned over to grab it, and whenever he did, yanked the steering wheel, inadvertently, and whenever he did, went off the road, and we caught a culvert and basically started cartwheeling. It happened so quick. Like, it was a fast moment. I just remember like the flashes and the noise, but I don't remember any pain or anything. It was just a really bizarre moment. It was just like any sort of high-stress moment like that. You don't feel anything. You're uber and overly aware of everything except for like physical pain, just because the adrenaline dump. And then, I come to, and it's like a movie. Like, I look back, the truck is upside down, steam is coming off of it. My little sister, who was sitting on my dad's lap, is crying. She's laying in the ditch right there. I can't find my older sister. My dad is there. He's, this is all within probably 75 yards or 100 yards. We're just scattered out. So I see Dad there, and he was just like breathing or, moaning or groaning or whatever. And I remember, I think sitting on his chest or his stomach and him groaning more about it. And me saying, pay attention, get up, what's going on? I realized, Dad, he wasn't doing good. And then, my guardian angel or the Lord or whatever it was, somebody just took me back to the moment. Hey, flag somebody down. So I hobbled up to the side of the road. I just had a broken ankle and some scratches and stuff, and that was it. For an 8-year-old, that seemed like a big deal. But if anyone's driving along, of course they're going to stop. But I didn't know that. I just knew I needed to get some help. Next thing I know, ambulances and cop cars and fire trucks start coming, and so whoever it is calls, they call my mom, and they say, there's a wreck. And she knows immediately it's not good, so she calls my grandpa, who just lives around the corner, all on the same farm, and says, we gotta go. And she turns the corner in her little car, and Grandpa's already out on the road, and waiting on her. She jumps in, and then she comes and she crosses the tracks, and the cop doesn't let her come up. So anyhow, we're putting ambulances and take to the hospital. They put a cast on me, and then I go by ambulance to Memphis to the Children's Hospital, and my little sister, they airlift her because she was super bad. Little 3-year-old girl. She got crushed between my dad and the steering wheel. Courtney, my older sister, she died immediately. And life is crazy, man. when you don't even realize, like, how delicate it is, and this stuff just happens so fast. They were like, yeah, your dad and sister died. And they told me that, and I said, I didn't know what that means. Like, what does it mean to an 8-year-old kid? Just a few weeks before, they found out that they were pregnant. They were expecting a kid. Mom went in for a checkup just a few weeks after the accident. You know, she's been through a lot of stress, and of course the doctor wants to make sure that she's okay and the kid's okay. And the doctor says, I've got some news. There's another one in there. You're gonna have twins. Just her life. Just that roller coaster. I don't know how she did it, but she did it. So I found out my dad is dead. My older sister, 11-year-old, she's gone. My little sister, who's 3, she's in a body cast. My mom is alone to raise us, and she's pregnant. And I'm an 8-year-old boy who has just become the man of the house. You know, something that got me through all these years of my childhood, it was my faith. I grew up Catholic. I've always been Catholic. Our whole family is Catholic. It's a non-negotiable. There are just some things in life that you have to do because love requires it. In the moment, I wouldn't have used those terms. As a 35-year-old priest, looking back, that's what it was. Love required that I surrender my childhood to take care of my child siblings, right? Surrender my childhood to be the man of the house because my mother lost her husband. That's something that, as an 8-year-old kid, I didn't understand, but that the faith taught me. Why did all this stuff happen? I don't know. And I surely didn't know as an 8-year-old kid, but I do know without a doubt that it prepared me for battles then, it's preparing for battles now and for battles to come. Damn, I wasn't expecting that. All through school, my dreams were to be a plumber and a carpenter, a mechanic, and an electrician, and just open up my own handyman business, drive a big truck with a big trailer and work all day. But my mom and my grandma, they said, you can't do that. They wanted me to go to school. So I kind of met them in the middle. Didn't go to a big university. I went to a small 2-year college. Went for 1 year and absolutely hated it. The classes were good, but my heart was not there. And so about halfway through the year, I started thinking about going to the military, which was nothing I ever thought about before. In the moment, it was mysterious for me joining the military because I didn't want to leave home. I loved home. It wasn't to see the world because honestly, I don't like traveling. It wasn't for an education because I hated school, but something inside me was just pulling. So joining the military in 2005 was a wartime. So most of us enlisted knowing what job we would do. I began an indoctrination course into this little special ops kind of job. And very hardcore, outdoor, survival kind of things. And I was so excited about it. It was a 2-week course before you began the 1.5-year programming to really weed out the weak guys, right? To thin out the guys who couldn't stick with it. And I thought I was doing all right. Now I get to the second to last day of this and I get cut. And I was absolutely heartbroken because here I was. I thought I was going to go in and do this super awesome, amazing job. Survival, evasion, resistance and escape, be in the woods all day and train people how to survive. So finally about 4 weeks, I get the notification from the commander saying that I got a job. And I was excited. What's it going to be? And I got logistics. Now, that's basically a mailman in the military. Now, mailmen are great, but that was not my plan in the military. Right, I didn't go in to deliver people or things, right? To be in charge of shipments, to be in charge of logistics. My first assignment was to Germany. And here I was, this young guy right out of training, and I end up in Germany doing a quality control job. That was an amazing job. I got a government vehicle and got to make my own hours, and I was driving all over the European countryside day in and day out. That was something that the rules and discipline and structure of the military, how it gave me freedom and gave me new life. It allowed me to do things that I would not have been able to do if I didn't have that structure and discipline in my life. In the summer of 2007, I was deployed to Central Iraq. Now, I was there at a very tense and very dangerous time. I'm not near the hero that so many other of my brothers and sisters were. The ones who literally were out every day in convoys, going to these different buildings, going into houses, saving people and getting rid of threats to humanity. Luckily enough, I was on the base all the time, so I didn't have to go kicking in doors, didn't have to carry around a gun to directly defend myself or other people. That being said, it was the largest base in Iraq, which made us a very big target. And every day, rockets and mortars came into where we were at. I was very much a sitting duck, along with everyone else on the base with me that stayed on the base. And anything coming into the airspace that was not identified immediately set off alarms, and you had about 3 seconds to decide what you were going to do to stay alive. For the most part, that just means dropping to the ground and say a prayer. And I got pretty good at that. So let me tell you, in Central Iraq in the summertime, the night shift is very nice. We were just right next to the runway, and you would hear the fighters crank up, and then they would turn on their jets and their afterburners, and they would take off. You couldn't see them at all, but you could hear them. You could feel the rumble in your chest, and as the sound got close to you, because we were at the end of the runway, you would look up and just see this small blue cone go off, and then 8 seconds behind it, another one, because they always flew in pairs, and that was a really neat thing about the fighters. The ones who go into danger never went alone, right? Not just the fighters and the planes, but also the guys on foot, right? In the military, that was something that I saw, in particular in this war situation. Never go into battle alone, right? Whenever I'm with people in their daily battles, their struggles, something that they're wrestling with, a sin they've got, a vice, something that they're ashamed of, what do they try to do? Battle alone. You never go into battle alone, right? You always have a wingman. You know, in scriptures, we hear that, where two or more are gathered in the name of the Lord, He is there, right? That means life, right? Where two or more are gathered, the Lord is there. The same is true in battle. Whenever you're gathered, there's an aspect of life and assurance of life that's present. My time in the military was really the first time in my life when I was out on my own. I just loved doing what I was doing. And it was really neat to see that in correlation with that joy, two things happened. I thrived spiritually and grew closer to the Lord, but I also succeeded. I was having such a good time. I excelled. I got multiple awards. Whenever I was deployed, I got a number of awards and a couple of medals. Shortly after coming back from deployment, I got below the zone, which was an early promotion given to usually just one or two people out of the whole unit. It was very competitive, and it was very, very limited, the people that were even considered for it, much less that got it. And I was fortunate enough to get it. And it was the fruits of so much hard work. But through that fun, God was calling me closer to Himself. The joy that I had, the success that I had in the military, even though I had that, there was something about this little inkling of priesthood that was just starting to bubble up that made me want to check it out. So I went into the military to pursue my dreams, to do this amazing survival job. But before long, I realized it's not what God had planned for me. And I surrendered to that. It hurt. But through that surrender, this joy just started coming out of nowhere. Not just internally in my soul and my spirit, but also I could see all these successes, these awards, these medals, this early promotion, a rare thing, getting all those things. Everything was going right whenever it wasn't my plan. But there was an aspect of surrender to God's plan that opened my eyes to a much greater life. And I hear the voice of the Lord inside saying, hey, you've surrendered. You've made it to this calm spot. I've got another mission for you to go on. So when I was in the military, naturally, it's my first time on my own, right? So first time to live by myself, make my own decisions, wash my own clothes, make my own bed, cook my own food. be self-sustaining, essentially, right, to take care of myself. And luckily, a part of that was continuing to live my faith. When I got to my first base, I got a government vehicle, so I would every day try to finish up the stuff on base right before Mass. Then I would go to Mass, and afterwards I would go grab something to eat, usually with multiple families that go to daily Mass. And they started showing me another facet of the Catholic faith, right? This beautiful jewel that we've got. There's so many cuts on it, so many angles. And they were slowly letting me see more and more angles of this great jewel that's been handed on. A couple of the priests would be there, the military chaplains, and I would just see them, interacting with the families, and I would think, oh, that looks kind of cool. But it never dawned on me as an actual calling to the priesthood. But these random ideas, these little instances, this fuller image of the priesthood, being a father at all hours of the day, right? Not just at Mass, not just during reconciliation, not just during pastoral visits, but also that these priests are human beings. And whenever I saw that they've got lives to live and that they're enjoying their lives, that broke down barriers for me. Little by little, one of them in particular started spending a lot more time. In logistics, we started our day early and finished pretty early. Father, he would start a little bit later and go later into the evening. And I usually had anywhere from 1 to 2 hours to kill until he finished everything up at the church there. I pretty much always spent that time in the chapel. I'd go to the Adoration Chapel and just sit in there. I wish I could say I was piously praying, but 4 out of 5 days a week I was asleep the whole time I was in there. So it was this daily nap time with the Lord. I would just go and conk out and get some Z's with Jesus, and the Lord was doing something there, right? By me going and wasting time, by resting in the Lord, he started just slowly, making it more and more clear. If these things, although they're small, are manifesting themselves in this great excitement and joy that I'm having, there must be something to it. Little by little, I began to see it was priesthood. One of the priests on the base there put me in contact with the vocation director for the Diocese of Little Rock. So I visit the vocation director in Little Rock, and then I go to visit the seminary for a day. And that trip solidified everything. I was at the height of my military career. Even within a few short years, I still had another year of my enlistment to fulfill, but I knew without a doubt that God was calling me. I said, all right, Lord, kind of the last test. I'm good at what I do. We're in a time of war. They need military troops. I still got time left in my enlistment. I want to go now. If you want me to go now, you got to make it happen. And he made it happen. I submitted an application for early separation, and it got approved, which was not common at that time. And in June of 2008, I got out of the military and then went into seminary the second week of August. In seminary formation, there are these 4 areas that we focus on: your human, your intellectual, your spiritual, and your pastoral. And it's this constant battle of keeping their balance. Naturally, you're going to put more emphasis on one area, but it's a matter of constantly seeking equilibrium. A big one that really shocked me was the intellectual formation. I wasn't expecting to go into seminary loving to study as much as I did. For my first 4 years of seminary, when I was down in Louisiana, I majored in philosophy and ended up graduating with honors, which was unheard of because in grade school, I didn't quite have that discipline. I fell in love with learning more. And this just exploded in minor seminary. And it continued through my theological studies. I was devouring it. Another area that I really enjoyed, growing individually as a human, but also helping my brothers grow as humans too. I saw so many different levels of my own humanity that I didn't know existed, that I was never aware of. But by interacting with other people in their strengths and in their weaknesses, helped me to better identify my strengths and weaknesses at the human level. Spiritual formation was a daily thing. Our bishop instituted what he called the non-negotiables. If we're going to be a seminarian, it's got to be 40 hours of study a week. It's got to be a daily holy hour and healthy human boundaries. Right? So if I'm not studying 40 hours, I'm not carrying up my end of the deal of formation. If I'm not making my daily holy hour, I'm not doing what I can to grow closer to Christ, holding up my end of the deal of formation. And if I don't have healthy boundaries with other people and even with myself, I'm not doing what I can to hold up my end of formation. Spiritually, the daily holy hour was one of the greatest things that I've done. That last pillar of formation, pastoral ministry, it's where, as a seminarian, I was constantly reminded why I study every day, why I'm continually working on my human weaknesses, why I'm continually praying. It's so I can go out and preach the gospel, share the good news. Having that pastoral pillar that always keeps us grounded, that was something that was always a sort of a spot that kept me in check. Throughout minor seminary, one of the ministries I did was hospice. There was one gentleman I'd go visit. It was at the end of the year. That spring, I didn't get over for the last couple of months. The very last day of school, I pack all my stuff up in my truck, and I'm ready to make the 8-hour drive back home to Arkansas. And I leave the seminary, and it was an almost audible voice of the Lord saying, go visit this gentleman. And in my mind, I was thinking, I've got an 8-hour drive. I can't go. I've got an 8-hour drive. I need to get back home. I'm just tired. It's the end of the year. I'm ready to go. I'll see him in the fall. I get gas, and I'm about to go on the road. And it was a bizarre moment because in my mind I was thinking turn left, but I went right out of the gas station. And the house was a block and a half behind the gas station to the right. And I surrender. I throw up my hands. All right, God, I'll go visit this guy. And I get a block and a half down, and I'm turning down their drive. And I see the lady, the man's wife, out in the front yard. And as soon as I pull in, she looks up and smiles ear to ear and runs up to the truck to see me. I didn't even get out of the truck. She said, Stephen, it's good to see you. I said, yeah, I'm sorry I haven't been around. She said, oh, that's fine. Don't worry about it. I tried going to seminary to find you, but you were in classes. I just wanted to let you know that Tim died. And just thank you for all that you did at the end. And it was just a bizarre moment of the Lord really showing me that the reason I do this is for his people, not for my own conveniences. Of course, she missed her husband. She was sad that he was gone, but she was excited to thank me for the love that I gave him, albeit in a very broken way. And I think that's a key thing for pastoral ministry. Remember, we're broken, but God always calls us to do things that seem like they're totally out of the blue. And we just got to trust that process. It's a life-changing process when we believe in it. Now, there's no explosive moment in my vocation. It was just a very gradual process. And to use two key players in the scriptures, Peter and Paul, when we think of vocations, very often we think of these Pauline conversions, right? Paul on his road to Damascus, and bam, his life changes in an instant. And so often in conversions, we think I have to have a Pauline conversion. I don't think that's the case. Do people have those? Yeah, absolutely. Mine was not like that, though, and I think the majority of people do not have conversion stories like that. The great majority of us have these Petrine conversions, right? Following this conversion of St. Peter, which was slow and gradual. He followed the Lord from the very beginning, and he was all in. He gave it everything he got, and when he did good, he did good. But when he messed up, he messed up, right? But it was just this daily chipping away, this daily marching along, one step at a time to grow closer to the kingdom, right? To follow Jesus more closely. This Petrine form of conversion is really kind of what I went through. I've always been Catholic. I've never denied Christianity. I've never walked away from the Lord. I've never had this crazy time when I was wild and rambunctious. It's just this slow, persistent journey of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but maintaining that forward progress. As a farm boy, sometimes formalities can be hard for me to follow, and I'm guilty of one moment, actually probably one of the most formal moments of my whole Catholic life. It was before a Mass at St. Peter's. I had the opportunity to serve Mass with Pope Francis. Before the Mass, it's the tradition, when time allows, for the Holy Father to go around and greet all the altar servers and the deacons who are going to be serving the Mass with him. So there we were, circled around in the chapel, and I strategically put my place at the end of the line, knowing it was going to be a gamble. Either he wouldn't get to me and I wouldn't get to greet him at all, or I would have a few more seconds to interact with him since I was the last one. That's a little bit of military strategy that I took with me into formation. So luckily, God's providence and time allowed for him to come around. He finally gets to me, and we have this small interaction. We talk a little bit. I share the brief story of a priest hero of mine, Father Stanley Rother. And then afterwards, I'm almost at the point of being filled with tears because as I was interacting with him, talking to Pope Francis about this very holy priest, this priest who loved with the Father's heart, this shepherd who did not run when his life was on the line, this priest who did what love required, I felt the Father's love from Pope Francis. The whole world is on his heart, is on his shoulders. But in that moment, He was looking into my soul, and I knew that he was loving me with the Father's love. The only response I had was to ask him for a hug. And so there, and the conversation was going on in Spanish, and instead of being very formal, it was very informal. I said, I just asked him basically in the Spanish of saying, "Hey dude, can I have a hug?" And his eyes lit up and he said, "Sure." And so then we hugged, and the guys with me got a big grin, and other guys, their jaws dropped because they'd never seen someone ask for a hug. And the Swiss guards were there. They didn't know what to do, but they started giggling themselves. But so that was the time I broke all formal protocol and asked the Holy Father for a hug. I was ordained a priest on May 28th, 2016, and I just recently celebrated my 5-year anniversary. My 5-year anniversary was 2,601 masses. So it was really, they add up pretty quickly. I have a little book that I keep track of all the masses I celebrate, who I offer the mass for, where I celebrated the mass, and also what number it is. So that's kind of how I keep track of where I've been and where I'm at. I've got a lot of open pages in the book, so I hope to fill them all up. So the way it works is my first year of priesthood, I'm an associate pastor. And typically you're an associate for a number of years. So I was kind of second in command under an older priest who ran this very large parish. And I assisted him in ministry of the parish. After just my first year of priesthood, though, the bishop sends me to 2 other parishes in the diocese where I was now named the pastor. I wasn't an associate. I was the one who assumed ultimate fatherhood. Initially, it was kind of, in some ways, odd, people calling me father, especially whenever they were 60, 70, or 80-year-old men and women, and I was just in my early 30s. But it's definitely a process of growing into that identity. Just like any first-time parent with their first child, they don't know what the heck they're doing, and they're learning what it means to be father, what it means to be mother. Same thing for the priest. We gradually learn what it means to be father. We grow into that identity. There was this lady who was having an emergency birth. Her child was not expected to live. This child had a particular chromosome disorder and was expected to be born alive but die within minutes afterwards. A beautiful thing happened. I get to the hospital and the doctor saw me come in as a priest and he said, "I want you to put on this gown. You're going to be in the room through it all. As soon as the kid is born, we're done. You do whatever you have to do." And it was an amazing moment when the doctor, when he recognized that his work can only go to a certain point, and there's also things that the priest does that he can't do. And so it was very much a team effort. He delivered the baby, and immediately he looked at me and said, "Go." I was there in the room, and I heard her cry as soon as she was born, an opportunity that priests by and large don't experience, the first cry of a child. I'm full of emotion. It was something you see in movies or you only hear about, something a priest doesn't live. But I lived it that day. And the world stops. Before the birth, I asked the parents what they were going to name her, and she said, "Diana." And I said, "Well, what's the middle name going to be?" And they said, "Well, we're not going to give her a middle name. It's just Diana." And in that moment, the Lord gave me just this inspiration, because it was also September 8th, there of 2016. It's the Feast of the Nativity of Mary. It's Mary's birthday. And so, in a way, the Lord challenged me to be a bold father and to take this spiritual authority as the spiritual father who was going to baptize this little girl and give her eternal life through baptism. Not many families have the opportunity to give birth to their kid on the birthday of Mary. And their eyes just lit up. They said, "Diana Marie." And I said, "I think that's a great idea." So the morning of September 8th, I baptized Diana Marie right there in that operating room. And it was such a powerful moment. The doctors didn't think she'd live more than a few hours. She ended up living about 7 weeks. She lived longer than any science said that she could. And I really believe that was our Blessed Mother with Diana. And that family just giving her the gift to enjoy life. On that day, that was a concrete example of the Lord inviting me to be a bold father. So a question I get often as a priest is, "Hey man, you gave your life to the Lord, that's good, but also you really gave up a big human desire. Do you ever wish you were married? Do you ever regret not having a wife?" And in some ways, is that longing there? Oh, absolutely, right? That's something that God wrote on our heart, to be fruitful and multiply, to be with somebody till death do you part. That's a natural desire, and it's going to be there until 10 minutes after you die, right? It doesn't just go away. But you know what? The commitment of love always has that necessary element of death that lingers with you even after you make the promise. That's what allows you to live out the commitment of love, right? Any vocation of love, any vocation of service, matrimony or priesthood, it's a sacrament of love, it's a sacrament of service, it's a sacrament of the death to self for the sake of giving life to another. So this longing is often manifested as a desire for intimacy. And people will often, challenge me or question me about, well, don't you wish you could just be intimate with somebody? And my life does not lack intimacy. I can surely tell you that in a safe and holy way, right? So intimacy is not limited to a mere carnal connection, which is what the world has boiled it down to. But the Lord has built it up to something so much greater than mere carnal intimacy, right? It's this intimate union with the great mystery. As a priest, I get the opportunity to stand face to face with the source of all mystery, with God, every day. So whether I'm in my own private chapel, in the rectory, standing face to face with love itself, right? That's pretty intimate. The author of every soul desires to spend time with me and in my soul, which then gives me the grace to go out and engage so many other human souls. That's pretty intimate. I'm taken to places in ministry where in a split second, somebody opens up their heart. Multiple times people have come up to me and said, "Hey, Father, do you have a second?" "Yeah, sure, what's going on?" And in an instant, they go into a life crisis and wanting some help, needing a father. You don't open your soul up to people like that you don't know, that you don't trust in. There's something about this intimacy that God has given me and that He allows me to enter into every single day. Intimacy, do I desire it? Yeah, but I get plenty of it. So as a little kid, I lost my father, and I grew up in a very, very real way fatherless throughout the majority of my life. Growing up without this single father has given the Lord the opportunity to give me many fathers. Each one of these father figures, whether it was my grandfather, my uncle, or various mentors of mine, they all came and went at different phases and stages of my life, and they engaged me at different circumstances of life. I've taken that with me into the parish priesthood. A lot of times it can be easy, and I was guilty of this before, of thinking that the parish priest just celebrates Mass. Maybe he does some confessions, but outside that, it seemed like a very boring life. When I went into the military, that changed because I began seeing how the priest has a greater life of his own, but also how he plugs into so many areas of his people's life. As a priest, I've experienced that now firsthand. And through my life, the Lord was preparing me to now be a father to many, even though I didn't even have a father growing up. And there was something about that mysterious dynamic of not having a father, but having many fathers that has now allowed me to be a father to many of whom do not have fathers. And so what I've taken from that is engaging them and being with them in various moments of their life, right? So whether it was somebody literally on their deathbed, I've been there. I was literally in an operating room with this family about to give birth to a little girl that was not expected to live more than a few hours because they wanted her baptized. I've given First Communion to hundreds of kids, done countless weddings. I've been with people from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, and not just over the span of 5 years. I have been with people at birth and death in the same day. That's a roller coaster of emotion, and that is exciting. There's so much more than just celebrating Sunday Mass. And it's truly a vocation that allows me to venture into the mystery of the human heart and to see how wild and adventurous that is. Anybody with a dream of doing anything great always looks up to a hero to give them an example of what they do. For example, if you like basketball, maybe it's Michael Jordan, or if it's football, maybe John Elway. For me as a priest, it's Blessed Stanley Rother. Father Stan was a priest for the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City. He grew up on a farm. He was a German Catholic farm boy, something that really resonates in my soul just a simple guy who worked hard, who loved the land, and who loved the Lord. And after graduating high school, he goes to seminary and he's ordained a priest. Shortly after his ordination, he's sent to mission territory. The Vatican has called dioceses to send out priests to these places that don't have fathers, to these flocks that don't have shepherds. And Father Stan volunteered. He raised his hand and told the bishop, "Send me." That's what love requires. These people need a father. These people need a shepherd. So in the 70s and into the early 80s, he is sent to Guatemala as a priest to serve the people of Santiago Atitlan. He ends up learning their dialect, becoming a part of their culture. He brings farming techniques that he learned as a kid. He actually built a radio station there to spread the good news using this what was, modern means of communication at the time. So despite these good things that he did, bringing the gospel, bringing the love of Jesus Christ, it was also a very hard time. It was a trying time in Guatemala, political and social upheaval, a lot of imbalances, to the point of persecuting and killing Christians. Left and right, his parishioners were being killed, slaughtered for not submitting to the government, for living out their faith. As a father, this infuriated Father Stan. A couple of times he was actually run out of the country. He was put on hit lists. But every time that would happen, he would always go back to the Archbishop and say, the shepherd cannot run at the first sign of danger. He didn't just say that, he lived it. He went back to Guatemala at a time when he knew it would be his last return. He knew that he was not liked because he was greatly loved. And because of that, it cost him his life. The night of July 28th, 1981, he was killed. They knocked on the door, and he said, "Here I am." And they slaughtered him right there. His heart is actually interred. It's buried there in the church in Santiago Atitlan because that's where his heart was. That's where he lived his life. That's where he loved to the fullest. That's where he did what love required. His body is buried in Oklahoma City, which is where he was raised, which is where his roots, dug deep, where he received, his life. So this beautiful connection of life and love in multiple places. And for Father Stan, just to give me that example of fatherhood, of shepherding, of being the shepherd who didn't run, that's resonated in my heart from the first time I heard about him in seminary. Even to this day, I always look up to him so that I can be a shepherd who does not run and that I can do what love requires. Father Stan was the first U.S.-born priest to be declared a martyr. After his beatification, now he's on his way for canonization. I had an interesting encounter with one of my superiors. He pulled me aside one day and said, you go work out in the mornings, don't you? And I said, yeah. And he could see that I was getting tired. Like I would be tired by the end of the day because I was waking up just around 5 o'clock or so, a little bit before, to go to work out before I celebrated the morning mass at 8 o'clock and began things in the office. He pulled me aside and said, you really need to start scheduling that in the middle of your day. Make an hour and a half in the middle of your schedule to go to the gym. Now, as a new priest, I was thinking, well, that's not a holy thing. That's taking away from precious time of ministry where I'm not going to be saving souls. I'm just taking care of myself. But I did it because you honor your superiors, right? You take the advice that they give you because maybe, just maybe, they know something that you don't. During lunchtime was actually a pretty open time, so instead of taking a formal lunch break, I would just go to the gym. And something neat started happening. So when I first went, it was my escape. Like I would just go and just quietly work out. If people asked me who I was, I would just introduce myself as Stephen for a number of weeks, getting to know the new people at the gym. They knew I was a priest, and they knew that was kind of my private time. It was really cool seeing the way that they responded to that, though, because in very short time, these same individuals who I'm lifting weights with, bench pressing and squatting with and running around the block with, are literally coming to me immediately after a workout seeking marriage advice. They're asking me questions between reps about how they can connect to and talk to their kid who is 16 and very rebellious and just started smoking cigarettes. Or about the kid in grade school that's not paying attention. If I could just pray for their grandparent who was just diagnosed with a terminal illness. This happened at the gym, but not at the church. And that was very eye-opening for me. Evangelization is not a cute little cookie-cutter formal task in the church. It's a lifelong commitment, and I would dare say that evangelization is not something that you do, but it's a way you live. Evangelization, in its fullest sense, is dying to yourself, living as Christ, and bringing the joy of the gospel into the world, meeting people where they're at with the love of Christ. Sometimes that love of Christ is merciful and patient and very gentle. Sometimes that love of Christ is hard because you have to speak the truth. You have to be a prophet. And so it's finding that balance, meeting people where they're at, and recognizing that preaching the gospel is not limited to the pulpit. It's not limited to the pews. It's not only confined in the walls of a chapel. Towards the end of my first year of priesthood, in prayer, I was thinking about CrossFit. And then the Lord put it on my heart, well, hey, why don't you contact the director of CrossFit and see if you can be a chaplain for them? Why don't you take the love of the gospel to those professional athletes there? I type a letter and I mail it to him. He said, yeah, come on. So for the last number of years, I've been going out every fall to be the chaplain at the CrossFit Games. And that's been another area of new evangelization, of preaching the gospel that began with just a hobby. The Lord doesn't want to compartmentalize anything in life, right? He wants us to be the whole package, the whole deal. The greatness of God is manifested in His simplicity, His oneness, not a division within Him, but that God is one. This dynamic unity of love, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Same thing for us. We're one person. Do we have many areas of our life? Absolutely. Absolutely. But how can the grace of Jesus Christ unite those things in a mysterious way in our life? Fitness has been one area of that. And I was having a conversation with Sean Bryan, who is known as the Papal Ninja on American Ninja Warrior, and also with another priest, and they were kind of working together to encourage me to apply for American Ninja Warrior. It's hard, but I did have physical training, and I was young, and I also had an interesting story. I applied for the show with the blessing of the bishop and got accepted, not just once, but twice, and it was really neat. The things that happened subsequently. I didn't do too well on it, got about halfway through the course and then fell in the water. But the fact that I was willing to do it broke down many barriers for people. I've gotten a lot of emails and letters from people that have seen the show and the reruns who have said I was in a life crisis and given up on God and was just wanting to watch TV and forget about everything, and I see a Catholic priest. And that gave me hope. One of the reasons I'm a priest is because I saw the many levels of the life of a priest, not just what he does at church, but his own personal life, his social life, his hobbies, and things like that. And on social media, I try to share those things. Of course, I share some things that are explicitly associated with priestly ministry, but I also make it a point to share things that people typically do not see. And so I share me playing with my two dogs, Murph and Shorty. I share videos of me working out or running around. I share videos and posts of me playing my guitar and harmonica. I share stories and images of me on hunting trips, me doing hobbies, doing things that I love. Why? Because I believe that the priesthood is not just something I do in the middle of the week or only on Sundays. Priesthood is the way that I live. Although I can connect with people in many different ways, something that almost immediately creates a connection between me and other people are my dogs. We kind of share a story. They were adopted, both of them were rescues, and just like me, I was in a way rescued. But by having the dogs there, the Lord reminds me, even in the most private moments of my life, I'm still responsible for loving. I'm still called to love and take care of something. And a dog looking up at you reminds you immediately that, well, you're loved and you're still called to love. So when I see Murph and Shorty there looking up at me and wanting to play, I remember that, my life's not about me. There's also a romantic side of me that's found in music. This began when I was in minor seminary. My mom gave me a harmonica for Christmas. You see, every year for Christmas, she gives us a new toy or a book or something that challenges us to learn something new. One year, for example, she gave me knitting needles. They didn't last long. Another year, she gave me a book full of magic tricks. I didn't learn any of them. Something about that harmonica stuck. She gave it to me, and initially I was thinking, this is a joke. What am I going to do with a harmonica? But 73 harmonicas later, it's a hobby of mine. But it's not just a quirky little thing that I do. It's led me to encounter people in their daily lives. For example, One area of ministry when I was in seminary, when I was in Rome, a couple of my buddies and I would go out on the weekends, Friday and Saturday nights, to the local blues bars and jazz clubs. And they were always amazing places of encounter. First of all, because the shows always began at 11 p.m., which is pretty late for a seminarian on Friday and Saturday night. We almost always would go out in our clerics, which that in itself was surprising to see so many clerics walking around at midnight, much less in a blues bar or a jazz club. And it led to some really amazing conversations because people would often come up and initially be surprised and almost get on to us for being out so late. And they'll say, well, why are you at the music club tonight? Why do you have this drink? How come you're not at home? And our answer was often the same thing that they asked us, but in reverse. Well, why are you here? So, well, we like the music. We enjoy the community. We like to get out and be part of the town. We would say, us too. And then you could see the people just almost short-circuiting because they're making connections that maybe the things I enjoy doing can be pathways to holiness. If you think of a song, a good song is orchestrated between many instruments, and each instrument plays their own part. If you have a band that is nothing but drums, it's going to be kind of hard to make music. Whenever you get these different members of a band that get together and play their instrumental parts at the right time, you make great music. We're all members of this great orchestra of God, right? We're called to deliver one message of salvation, one message of Jesus Christ, but we're called to do it in a unique and personal way. What part of the song is God calling you to play? And are you okay with letting the other members of the band play their parts? Because whenever you can embrace your part and play your beats in the music, your parts of the song, and let the other members of the band do theirs, that's when the music is really amazing, right? But whenever you start trying to play the parts of the others, it just becomes ruckus. A fun image with the harmonica is that it's a little instrument I can always have with me. Literally, it fits in my pocket, and it's small. But if I'm going to make music, I got to use it. And I'm guilty as well of the faith being like that for me. It always being with me, but me forgetting to play it. I can carry it with me as a badge of honor, but if I don't play the instrument, it's not making any music. Same thing with the faith. You can call yourself a Christian, you can call yourself a faithful Catholic, but if you're not living it, then it's just lip service. All right, so we have to make the music with our lives, and God's calling you. God is calling you to play a song in harmony with the church, in harmony with tradition, in line with what He's calling you to do, to preach the good news. So what's the song that you're playing? I'm Father Stephen Joseph Gadberry, a farm boy from the Arkansas Delta. I love hard work and I thrive under pressure. I'm an Iraq War vet. I'm passionate about hard work and I love fitness. I've got 2 fun dogs and I'm the pastor of 2 great parishes. I'm a shepherd of souls and I love my flock. I'm insanely in love with our Lord Jesus Christ and I want to share Him with everybody. I am a Catholic priest of the Diocese of Little Rock, Arkansas, and I'm an evangelist. That's who I am, and that's what God has called me to do. So here I am, a 35-year-old Catholic priest, young in years, but pretty rich in life experiences. It began on that little family farm in the Northeast Arkansas Delta, where I learned about hard work, I learned about dedication, I learned what it means to be a member of a family that works together for their livelihood. My father and older sister died in a tragic vehicle accident that I survived along with my little sister. From that moment on, I, in an instant, had to become the man of the house with my mom to raise my sister and my 2 little brothers. And my mother taught me about how to love with a gentle heart. After graduating high school and spending a year in a small community college, I went to the military. I went in to do this survival and rescue job and eventually ended up washing out of that and doing this logistics job. I grew in this identity as a human being, as a beloved son of God, and I grew closer to the Lord. Growing closer to the Lord, He put on my heart and whispered into my soul, drop your nets, follow me. Transitioning from the military into the seminary was smooth with so many battle parallels, ultimately surrendering yourself for the sake of giving life to others, which perfectly led through the seminary formation and into the priesthood, when at that ordination I laid down and died to myself and rose in Christ, not only rising in Christ, but receiving the gifts of the Spirit that I need to carry out sacramental ministry, to bring His miraculous presence to the world today that is so much in need of it. Right? Bringing God's grace to people of all walks of life, not only in the parish, which I do on a daily basis, but also to bring the gospel to people who typically would not get them, whether it be fitness or hunting or through music. God has given me the tools necessary and His grace to bring His presence to those people who long for Him. Through this journey, I've wrestled with so many things, but through that battle, through that struggle, I've gained so much clarity. I've opened my heart up to you. I've shared my mind. I've shared my life. I've made myself terribly vulnerable before you because I believe in the power of love. I believe that a story can change people's lives. By wrestling with my own history and my own questions of who I am and what God is calling me to do, it helps me to grow closer to the Lord. But there's a power in telling the story. You see, as Christians, our faith is built on stories that are passed on. This great story of the incarnation of God, God becoming man and living among us, so that the story of God's love is no longer separated from us, but it's integral to who we are, to our humanity. And considering the story of salvation and God's great love for you, the fact that He's loving you into existence in a life worth living leads you to the second important story of your life. That's the story that you live, the story that God is still writing with you in your life. How does that story play out? And then thirdly, the stories of other people. How do you enter into the stories of those people? You see, stories are powerful. You've got the story of salvation with God, who makes it all possible. You've got your story. Everyone else has their story. And you know what? These go together to make this amazing library of love. And that's the great plan of God in creation. And you're a part of that. And so I would invite you to wrestle with your own life. Think about your own story. How? How would you tell your story? What are the high points of your story that you want the world to know? What are the low points that you're terribly embarrassed about that you wouldn't share with anybody? What are all the dots in the middle? How are the things that you went through in your life indicative of God's great plan for you? And the only way to truly live out those plans of God are for you to wrestle with the plans that you think you're living now. How do they line up with truth? How do they line up with the good things of life? How do they show beauty? How do they lead people to God? I believe in the power of the story. If there was a wish of mine, it would be that I can go into the parish and see every one of my faithful parishioners excited about their story, who recognize their own life as a beautiful thing, their own life, as Fulton Sheen put it, as a life worth living. Because it's so full of mystery, of chaos, of confusion, and that is adventure. But beyond that, I want to see them going out to all ends of the earth to preach the gospel, to share the good news so that they too are evangelists. Not that they only are fed too, but they go out and feed others who are hungry as well. It's this give and take dynamic that Christianity calls forth. Yes, we must receive it from Christ, but we receive it so that we can then go out to share it. And ultimately, that's what this whole story to me is about, the daily grind of love. Now, that's a beautiful thing, right? Because that's what gives us life. And it's that daily wrestle that draws us deeper into the mystery of God. And we only do that by wrestling with our own lives, with our own humanity. By freely wrestling with who we are, we can more freely enter into the wrestle that other people have in their lives and help them to find God in that battle. Who are you, and what is God calling you to do? Now, maybe you don't know who you are. I would invite you to just recognize the restlessness within your own heart. That's a great place for learning who you are. St. Augustine of Hippo has this famous and great line, "Our heart is restless until it rests in you, O Lord." If you don't know who you are, stop and reflect on what creates restlessness within your heart. Now, that can be your desires for good and great things. It can also be things that weigh you down, but what takes your internal energy? What consumes your soul and spirit? That will help you to understand better who you are. Now, maybe you know who you are, and so for you, it's a question of mission. What are you being called to do? Then you have to start considering philosophical and theological principles. Maybe you're an atheist or an agnostic who doesn't believe in God or doesn't even care about God. For you, I would invite you to continue seeking truth. What does that look like? Do not be afraid of truth. I would challenge you to learn more. And the more you learn, the more you will know what is true. Truth ultimately reveals itself. Now, maybe you are a believer in God, a believer in moral, objective principles, a believer in God's great plan in life, but you've kind of fallen away from it, or you don't see the need for it. I would invite you to concretely make time to pray. Read your scriptures, 5 minutes every day, one chapter of the gospel. Go to church on Sunday. When was the last time you attended Mass on Sunday? This would be a great, concrete way of getting back into the routine. Now, maybe you go to Mass every Sunday, and that's good enough for you. I would challenge you to go to Mass during the week. I would challenge you to go to monthly confession and receive that great mercy of our Lord. Now, maybe you've been away from the church for a while. Well, how do you begin? Maybe you're full of shame or embarrassment. I would say start with the obvious thing, the fact that you're hurt and that you're broken. Go to the sacrament of reconciliation and get that healing balm of God's mercy. Now, maybe you're a faithful Catholic and you go to church on a regular basis and you live out your faith. Maybe you even go to daily Mass and a weekly holy hour. You pray the rosary as often as you can with your family. Fantastic. But you know what? You still have not arrived. God doesn't just call us to a personal relationship with Him for the sake of that relationship. He calls us to Himself so that we can then be sent out, to be an evangelist, to share the good news to all ends of the earth, and help your pastors to find the lost sheep. And when you find them, don't criticize them, don't ridicule them, but pick them up, carry them back with you, take them to church, and you help them in their process of healing. You see, all of us struggle day in and day out with who we are and what we're called to do. And for us, it's always a big question, but a next step is always possible. So find your next step and take it.